On this week's episode, we give our impressions of Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer in IMAX 70mm. Then, we debate whether or not audiobooks count as real books. Stay tuned for our verdicts. What you are listening to is real. The parties involved are not cool. They are actual geeks with a case pending in the court of public opinion. The party's case has been dismissed, and the dispute will be settled here on our podcast. There will be no lawyers. There will be no witness testimony. The judge's decisions are final.
Hello, I'm Judge Ivan.
I'm Judge Jonathan, and this is Geeks on Trial. Today's case, don't judge a book by its format.
Welcome to Geeks on Trial. This is the podcast where we settle petty disputes between actual geeks over movies, video games, board games, and more. If you'd like to submit your own geeky case for a future episode, you can email us at geeksontrial@gmail.com. You can also support the show over at patreon.com/geeksontrial for just a few bucks a month, and you'll gain early access to both our audio and our video episodes before they are released to the general public.
Ivan, I've got one question for you.
Okay, only one?
It's the question that's on everybody's mind.
Mm-hmm.
Barbie or Oppenheimer?
See, what I did was I saw them both at the exact same time. I was watching Oppenheimer in IMAX, and I had Barbie on my phone.
Okay, I guess it was a pirated cam version of it or something?
No. I bought two to make it legal because I support the movie system and the theaters. I had a webcam next door in the different theater, live streaming Barbie to my phone.
So you bought 2 tickets.
To Paradise, yes.
And you went into the first theater, just plopped your webcam on the chair,
right.
Then went next door to Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. That's a good.
Listen,
that's a pro
if
move.
you know anything about me, I support small businesses. I support AMC theaters 100%, and I love the movie industry.
Well, that's it. That's all we need to know about you. Yeah, in truth, I'm pretty sure you haven't seen Barbie yet.
Nope.
I did. I saw.
I've seen a Barbie.
Barbies? You've seen Barbies.
I've seen Barbies. I've seen the music video for the 90s song, I'm a Barbie Girl.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know
Is that the full title?
I don't think so.
We don't know. By Aqua, of course. Who's
Which means
also
water.
well known for their other hit.
Yes.
We'll let the viewers and listeners fill us in on that one. I did see Barbie first only because it was impossible to get in to see the IMAX version of Oppenheimer earlier. Right. I don't know if you have been keeping up because the two of us saw Oppenheimer together and we went over to we made the trip to the real IMAX in New York City, which is one of the only real IMAXs in the world. And
right.
This is part of the thing we can discuss. I think it's part of what's interesting from a geek technical side or a movie person side.
Yep, that's what we call ourselves.
Right. Christopher
movie
Nolan wants people to see this movie in 70mm IMAX, right? There are, because I looked it up, there's like 30 theaters in the world that are showing it in that format.
Yep.
And we are lucky that there are 2 within driving distance. Not in our state, mind you.
Right.
But they're in driving distance, like an hour.
Which always upsets me when there's like not movie things in New Jersey because like New Jersey is the home of the motion picture. Like that's where like the film was created. It was in Jersey and everything's like, nah, we're good.
You're talking about Clerks, right?
Yeah. That's the movie. That's the original movie. Kevin Smith's
home
Clerks
of the movie.
Yep.
Yeah, Kevin Smith should. I'm surprised he doesn't. Oh, he does have a theater, doesn't he?
I mean, he like took one over, I think, but I don't know how.
Right, but he doesn't.
Works.
It's not. You have to have a certain. Not everybody. It's not that people don't want to show the 70mm Oppenheimer. They don't have the capabilities.
It's such a weird thing because that screen. I looked it up later the other day. It is 90 feet by 70 feet, plus or minus. That is ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, the one we went to is the biggest in the country.
Right.
Not all IMAX screens are that big.
Right.
So it's a little bit over the top.
So when you think about, okay, where would the biggest movie screen in the country be? You wouldn't think Manhattan. You don't think like the biggest anything is in New York. Like there's no room for that stuff.
No, I can see it, but it does seem weird that it's not. I don't know. The second biggest must be in L.A. or something, right? Like there's got to be a huge one in L.A. Like, it's
And also-
Hollywood, baby.
And like, why is it AMC that owns them? Like, isn't IMAX is a separate corporation?
They license their technology out to different theaters.
But you would think like IMAX would have like the best, like there would be a standalone IMAX theater somewhere that has the biggest screen.
It's probably just
But-
not in their interest. Like, why spend the money? They just have the deals going with other companies. I don't know.
And it's probably cheaper. They just sell the equipment to AMC and make money.
But we did see this, the full thing now. We've seen 70 millimeter movies before, but this is the first time I've seen one in IMAX. So
Right,
that is
same.
it is a little different. And Oppenheimer I looked this up, so I believe it's around 75 minutes of it, and it's a 3-hour movie, are what were filmed in the full IMAX presentation.
Right.
So it does change aspect ratio from time to time, which I guess I was so immersed in the movie I hardly noticed most of that. Or also we were pretty close to the screen, unfortunately. Right. So maybe that helped.
There's only a few times where like it bothered me, like mainly when it went from like a dark scene where it was small, it was a 300-foot screen, small, and then it went to like 4:3, which is basically what IMAX is.
Right.
And it was only when it went from like dark to light where I'm like, oh, that's weird. But
yeah, it is. But it is interesting because Nolan he's been on the IMAX kick since at least Dark Knight.
right,
He's had some awesome IMAX filmed scenes, but most of them have been action heavy. And
Yeah.
what's interesting about this movie is it's a 3-hour movie. I gotta estimate that 2 hours and 45 minutes of it are people in rooms talking to each other.
right. But what was great though is like anytime it was a nature or outdoor scene, that
Right.
was IMAX.
Yeah.
So like you could like I forgot where they were, but there was like mountains in the background, and that was just beautiful.
Los Alamos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
New
it
Mexico.
was just pretty, and like that made the IMAX different because something about IMAX, I think it's also like there's a different depth of field. So the background isn't as blurry as the foreground and stuff like that when you use like a regular camera. So you get the full range of visual beauty.
You also just
the
get,
IMAX.
just the fact that it's 70 millimeter is like the resolution on it is a
Right.
lot clearer than other kinds of film.
Right.
But yeah, anytime there was like a shot of them on horseback, and you're just like, "Whoa, I'm at a planetarium at the Science Museum, seeing a
Now,
crazy vista."
I don't know about you, but like when they went to 70 millimeter, did your eyes like dart around the screen of like, okay, what should I be looking at? Like,
Because I think because we were it's really hard to get tickets for this. Like,
Yeah,
they
still.
are sold out for most of its run at most theaters.
Yeah.
So we were kind of off to the side. It wasn't a terrible seat, but it wasn't
No.
the best.
right.
But yeah, there were definitely times when I was like, I'm trying to take it all in, but now I'm kind of like, I'm gonna look at that guy's face, and now I'll look over there.
Right.
It's
Now, I occasionally have that issue, like in regular theaters. I'm like, okay, they want you to look at like the person talking, but I'm like, oh, let me look at the background. Let me like get all this in. And I'm like, oh, what should I be looking at? It's clearly
You know
what's
who
supposed to be in
loves
focus,
that?
but
The set dressers, the continuity people. They're
Exactly.
like, somebody's looking, and it's Ivan.
But I'm also the same guy who, like, in a open world game, I'll like ignore a lot of the main quests and like go around and like see what break stuff, see what's available.
That's your philosophy for movies. I'll on the third watch, I'll watch the plot, but the
I'll
first
listen to
few
the story,
runs,
but-
I'm checking out the items in the background, the side quests,
Now,
I call them.
the other great thing about this movie was the sound. The
Yes.
sound design, the music, the explosions, the way they subtracted certain things and added certain things, and the fact that we were surrounded by about 3,200 speakers made it insane. Like the subwoofer scenes alone were just incredibly, like it shook you.
Yeah, I think even if, I was saying it's funny that this is an IMAX heavy movie when it's so much of it is so, I don't know, for lack of a better word, not in a bad way, but boring.
Right.
The movie, it's not like I don't think it's boring to watch, but the things being depicted are in real life were probably pretty boring.
Right. And not to give, like, I mean, we might spoil some stuff, so spoiler warning, but, like, a lot of it is,
Well,
like...
it happened in real life.
Right.
these
like,
events.
oh, it's 10 men sitting in a white room at a brown table.
Right.
Or, like, you know, Robert Downey Jr.'s character is in an office talking to a guy for a good chunk of the movie. Like, you know, that kind of stuff.
But
now, what did... Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, even though that's the case, I feel like the sound design and the score in particular, and especially in IMAX with all those speakers, makes it feel like this is a heart-pounding, exciting, suspenseful thing happening. The music is almost constant during a lot of the movie, and I loved it. I thought the score was really, really good.
Now, who did you say we were talking after the movie at dinner? Who did the score for this? It was somebody who you didn't think.
Ludwig Göransson, who's a Swedish guy who I knew because he did the score for the TV show Community.
Okay.
And lately, he's been blowing up. He did the Mandalorian theme song and some other big projects, and now he's did Oppenheimer. Like, so
now,
I think he did the second Black Panther movie too. But so he's pretty much like. He's a huge name now in music, which is cool.
Now, was that an unintentional pun? He's blowing up now?
It was.
That's good. I like it.
No pun was intended.
That's true. I like it.
I guess we can talk about the movie itself if you want. Do you want
So,
it?
like, well, I want to get into another thing. So, I had a few things that, like, bothered me about the movie, but it wasn't about the movie. So, it's 2023.
Makes
a lot
sense.
of theaters don't use film anymore. So a lot of people don't know how to handle film. So unfortunately, I don't know if many people, I don't even think you noticed it when we were talking about this in the car ride, but the film was dirty. Not like, you know, sexual. Well, it was sexually dirty as well in a few parts. But there was blotches in a certain part of on the film that you can see. There's a hair that was in a few scenes. There's a scratch in a few scenes. And I've heard people online complain about this, about seeing it in other theaters that, you know, not our theater. But, you know, it's kind of sad that, like, film isn't a mainstream thing anymore. So people necessarily don't know how to take care of it in a theater, or they don't know how to clean it, or they just don't care to clean it. And that was just kind of like, it took me out of a few scenes where it's like you're looking and there's like a hair just going across the screen.
I don't know how hard that is to maintain, though. I mean, I really don't know. Like, maybe my guess would be it's less about technical skill or lack of caring, and more that AMC is just not paying anyone to do that.
Right, and there's no time in between scenes.
Right, it's like,
movies.
Look, we're showing this movie in our theater for 3 weeks, maybe a month. There's like 3 or 4 showings a day. Why it would take us X amount of time to take it out, clean it, put it back, like.
Well, because it's also, like,
you know?
I was thinking about it too. It's like literally, what is it, 4 miles of film? Or
I think it was
ridiculous?
more than that. I think it's like 11 miles. It's like an insane.
So, like, somebody has to stand there with like a cloth holding the film, cleaning it for 11 miles worth of film. Like,
I don't know how that works. Is there a machine they run it through that can?
There might be a machine, but like most theaters don't do that anymore. So this theater probably just doesn't have that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I would think if any theater did it, it would be this one.
Right. And I don't know how many, like, are we like, what, 1 week in to it?
Yeah, it's been out for a week once this airs. Yeah.
So there's going to be, by the time the final week shows it, there's going to be more crap on that film. So it'll be weird.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But it's also like that's why you use, like, that's one of the perks, I guess, of film. Like, you get those imperfections. Like, there was film grain in a lot of the movie and, you know, stuff like that. But, you know, that was like my only major flaw in the film. So
Yeah. And I mean, I noticed a few like blips and stuff here and there, but only like once did I really pay attention to it.
Right.
So it didn't bother me too much. I love the movie overall. I think it's definitely worth going to see. I think maybe don't do the Barbie Oppenheimer double feature because that just seems like total whiplash.
Yeah.
But maybe back one night, then the next night. That's what I think.
So tell us about the movie. What's the movie about?
Oh, well, we don't need to get into it too much because we got a whole show to do, but it's about Oppenheimer. I do think it was a fascinating movie, and I didn't know anything about this guy. I knew nothing.
Neither did I. I knew he existed.
Right.
I knew that was about it. Like, and I also didn't know anything going into the film. Like, I didn't know it was going to be in Princeton, in whatever state. I didn't know Albert Einstein was going to be in the movie.
I didn't know that.
Because I saw the guy with the white hair at one point, and I'm like, huh, oh, that makes sense. They're in Princeton.
That is a tricky thing with Albert Einstein because I feel like it's so hard. It's like trying to cast someone as Donald Trump almost.
Right.
It's like one of these people who let me explain for people who are like thinking of comparing Einstein and Trump.
Not in my small town.
Just that there are so many exaggerated caricatures of them.
Yep.
They're almost like cartoon characters in real life that it's hard to see Einstein on the screen because he was really like this and he did look like this. But it almost seems like it's hard to do Einstein without it seeming like an SNL skit at this point.
That's why I was like happy that it was like like an actual old man with like white hair, and I was like, because at first I'm like, oh, it's funny. Oh no, wait, this is what he looked like.
Yeah, because and it's also just because there aren't that many. We don't have really any Einstein movies, right? There's that one where young Einstein.
Oh yeah, oh, it's weird. We don't have like a biopic about Einstein.
I think there is one, but I don't know when it came out. I haven't seen it. I think there's one, but yeah, I think people avoid it for that reason. I think it's just a little. It's hard not to seem goofy that way.
Because whenever you see Einstein, you see the picture of him sticking his tongue out.
Right.
Like that. That's like.
Yeah, it's you just use him as a joke character almost. Which is
but
sad.
I did like the balance of this movie because it was set up like two separate movies. There was the whole story of him going to college, creating the bomb, going to the government basically stealing his creation, which whatever, and then the bomb exploding. And then I'm like, oh, that was a quick 3 hours. No, my friends.
yeah. I was like. I thought so. Like, I mean, again, some minor spoilers for kind of the structure of the movie now. But if my dishwasher's beeping right now, you probably can't hear it. But I thought I'd let you know. Great. So then it's good that I mentioned it.
That's your atomic bomb.
Right. Yeah. When the bomb goes off, I thought the movie might end right now.
Well, because it was set up that way.
I was kind of like, oh, I wish, like, I wanted more. I was like. But it felt like it might end, and I was like, oh, I was disappointed almost. And then I was happy there was like another hour.
Well, because I was also confused too, because like, oh, we didn't wrap up a few ends.
Sure.
It's a weird place to end it, but it makes sense to end it here. Like, that's literally the climax of like his career.
I felt very much, it reminded me of old school epic movies like Epic Movie.
Oh, yeah.
No, like Lawrence of Arabia or Full Metal Jacket, where these movies that kind of 2001 is an obvious one where these movies kind of have very specific parts that maybe aren't super cohesive, but it almost for a very long movie almost works better that way because you almost kind of like reset yourself and keep going.
And it was because like in the beginning, all these stories were like very intertwined because that's how his life was going. And then the second half, once again, spoilers, like they kind of like, they not raced for that last hour, but they like, it chunked it. Like, okay, this happened. He aged rapidly over one scene to another scene. And then the movie ended.
Yeah, I thought it was well done the way they did it. Christopher Nolan likes to do things non-linearly.
Right, and I think that makes the movie... Like, it didn't... Like, I was sitting there for 3 hours plus 2 hours of trailers. It didn't make me feel like I was sitting there for 3 hours.
Yeah, I think... I give a lot of that credit to the score. I think the movie has incredible momentum. For 3 hours, it just feels like it never stops moving. Right. And I think it's because of how good that music is that like keeps you pumping through scene to scene.
That and like a lot of the editing, like they had little like, no, I don't want to say like, royalty free clips in between, but like, there's like clips in between of acts of like the stars or like little explosions,
chemistry,
and, like, particles. To make it kind of like, because that pulls you in more, like especially seeing it in IMAX, because those scenes were in IMAX. There's just a 70-foot screen of like space in front of us, and it looked amazing. Yeah. Like where in any other movie that'd be like cheesy, but the way it tied in with the music, the voiceover over it, and the story, it worked because that was kind of like how he was thinking.
Yeah.
Like you were seeing his internal monologue. I don't know.
Yeah, no, exactly. It made sense. I loved it. I was a big fan, and definitely a step up from Tenet, Nolan's last movie. This was a lot better, but
I didn't see that, so
I was happy with it. Go check it out. It's on Max.
But I do want to, when I see it at home, because I eventually do want to see it with Danny. It might be a headphones movie.
Maybe. I'm thinking of going to see it again in a just regular format.
Oh, that would be interesting because you can like compare contrast of like the difference, because I'm sure they have to like pan scan some of those scenes down.
Yeah. Christopher Nolan probably. I'm sure he has an approved cut of it that way. Yeah.
Or unless he filmed those scenes twice.
Well, on the Blu-ray, because this is how his other Blu-rays are, the format does change. It'll fill up your screen for the IMAX portions.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, I like that.
So you'll have that to look forward to.
I will. I'll wait. Let's wait.
All right. We got to get into today's case. We don't have any more time to waste. It comes to us from the internet. You can find a link in our episode description. And our defendant today is Steven, with a PH. Steven is an avid reader and a participant in the Goodreads Book Challenge. This is an online website that challenges its members to read a large number of books each year. You can input the number. And Steven has so many books down already. He's currently only 10 away from his goal of 100, with the year only half over so far. However, a lot of those books on his list are audiobooks. Some of those books are things like short stories, poems, even comic books and manga. And now Steven is questioning whether or not any of these things are actually books at all, or if he's being fraudulent in this challenge. As dual judges here on Geeks on Trial, it's now our job to determine whether Steven is really reading or if he's cheating and being deceiving.
I do like how you went into Seinfeld a little bit there. You had a little Seinfeld under your throat.
That's involuntary. That just happens to me all the time.
I was watching Seinfeld, and you could hear it, so it was in your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
talking about books.
This brings up a lot of interesting questions of, like, what do people consider books? And, like, at what point do you not consider something a book?
Yes. It's a question that we are gonna definitively answer today.
Because, like, in the world of print media, there's, you can go as small as a pamphlet. Like, that's not a book. But then you go to, like, like, is it an X amount of pages make a book? Like, if we're counting fortune cookie fortunes, I've read a lot in my lifetime.
Sure. If you bind the text of a fortune cookie into a book, is it a book?
Now, what do you... So,
I might sneeze.
That's staying in. You almost did an involuntary sneeze dab there.
Sorry, folks. Yeah, that's how I like to do it sometimes.
We're young. We're with it. Now, what do you consider as a book? You read more than I do. We've talked about this. And, like, what do you consider as a book?
It's a low bar, to be fair. I don't read that much.
No, but I just don't read.
Just more than you do.
Right.
Okay, so this is, you're really getting to the heart of it. Mm-hmm. There's multiple. The audiobooks, I feel, that can almost be a discussion all on its own.
Right.
That's like a separate thing.
Right.
And then there's a lot of nitty-gritty things. We might need to go down the list, each one at a time, and say book or not a book.
Why not?
So let's say this. Honestly, maybe my thoughts will be controversial. I don't know. Short story, not a book.
Interesting. For me, that's... So we're both good. Should we just... We'll both answer.
Sure.
So for me, a short story... And now, because I work at my local theater, would you count a play, like a printed play, as a short story?
I would say those are two separate things.
Well, yes, they are technically two separate things, but in this case, I would say a short...
theoretically, if a play is short, it's a short story, but I'm using the tradition, the rigid definitions.
So I would say a short story counts to me as a book.
So, well, here's the thing. Well, I don't know, unless you want to make your case first before I tell you.
I would just. Well, I'm sorry. I would say like because like if you think of like what is The Great Gatsby. Now
Sure.
that's a novel, but it's
Yeah.
a short novel.
That could be called a novella, but I don't know if Great Gatsby
Well,
is.
that's. I don't know if it's. I would say anything. You know, if it's like if a short story is over 75 pages, book.
Because I don't think that's a short story. Now, I bet there is I bet we could look it up, and I'm not going
Well,
to.
no, that's what the
But-
comments are for.
I bet whoever it is out there who decides these things has some kind of ruling over what makes it
Right.
the way that the Academy defines
You have to have a 90-minute movie.
right a short is anything this length.
Now, let me just say this because every short story that I normally read is in a compilation,
Right.
which that would be a book of short stories. So, okay, I agree with you. You tell me your reason.
You turned yourself around.
Yeah,
I didn't
I
have to
did.
say anything.
No. But give me your reason before I say it, because I might just disagree with you for the fun of it.
Yeah, I was saying there's not a. No, look, here's the thing. No, I'm just
boy.
going to say my thing. HTT,
All right.
as I say. HTT, here's the thing. If you printed a single short story and just printed that in a book. Now, I'm thinking of short story collections, Stephen King. I have a couple of those. And a short story in one of those is not more than 30 to 50 pages.
Okay.
I think. I don't think it's, but it depends. What's the print size? What's the font size? There's
Right.
too many
There's
factors.
a whole bunch of stuff, yeah.
I think if you just put one of those in a book, nobody would print that because you would read it in 10
Right.
minutes. And I just don't know what the. I don't think that exists. Like, technically, is it a book? Like, it's a physical object? It's a book?
Right.
Sure. Technically, the book is just what you call the format more than the contents, which would be
Because like
a
a phone
novel.
book, a phone book is a book, but you're not sitting there reading the phone book unless you're some kind of freak.
That's true. That is true. So I just think the fact that you have short story compilations just means that it only counts as a book if there's like 20 of them. Now, you might get into some murky waters if you start talking about, well, what if you take one of those short stories away? Like, how many short stories do you need to qualify as a book? What's the minimum?
Because so what turned me around on when I was talking and I, backpedaled into my story was the compilations, because I don't think I've ever read, except for like maybe one or two Mark Twain things that you can buy for like $2 somewhere. I don't think that I've ever read anything that's not a short story compilation. So I would say if it's a compilation, then that makes it a book. Single off short stories, not a book.
Well, let me say this too, because truthfully, ebooks, the existence of ebooks muddy this thing completely, because now you have like there's the Kindle singles,
Right.
where people will just write a short story and publish it as an ebook. So I really am thinking in terms of dinosaur media, of print media, because to me, like in the era of Kindle, literally anything you can sell for 99 cents on the Kindle store.
Right.
And so that's maybe completely changed things. So just keep in mind, I'm a boomer, and that's where I'm coming from with this discussion.
Now, do you consider an ebook reading a book? Like if it's a full 300-page novel on an ebook, will you say, "Oh yeah, I read that book"?
That 100%. There's
Okay.
to me there's no ambiguity there. There's no gray
Right, it's just-
area.
It's just
It
a
does-
media format.
You have read a book. I mean, 100%.
So short stories, we agree, not a book.
Now, I mean, then I think from there it gets even even more obvious, because everything else, like a poem's
Right.
not a book.
No, because if
single
you-
poem?
That's the thing. Is our person considered like, oh, I just read a, because a poem could be like a what is that? A
Yeah.
3-4-3 or whatever the
Haiku.
haiku. It's technically a poem, but
575.
it's 575. That's not poems unless they are once again in a collection, not a book.
But here's the problem, though. Here's the problem. You can't put a limit on a poem. Homer's Odyssey, Beowulf.
Oh, right. That's technically
That shit's poems.
That shit is poems.
And I have that quote on the inside of the cover. This shit is poems.
Well, you have that tattooed across your chest.
Yep. I have it in a lot of places. I have a sign over my door like in Ted Lasso, and I slap it. This is poems. Finally, we have something to put on a T-shirt. Thank fucking God. I've been waiting.
We need money.
All right.
Now, what about...
So that's hard. So I'm just saying, poem... I don't know what he's saying. A poem that could, again, that's very hard to define. Right. I think it's the same rules as a story. Like if the poem is, I mean, Dr. Seuss book is a book, isn't it? You could call that a poem.
Dr. Seuss books are short stories.
Well, you know what? For the sake of this discussion, I think we should leave kids' books out of it.
Because if it's on actual cardboard, we don't count it.
That's a different thing.
If you have buttons to press and it makes a sound, no.
So I'm gonna give a like 50%. That's like it depends.
Right, because like the two that you mentioned are like the oddballs out. Like they're different because they like kind of like changed the way they do things. But like the average poem, like a regular Robert Frost poem, that's not a book. It's just a poem.
Favorite. But of course, a poetry compilation, I would count that as a book for sure. Right. Yeah.
So go on.
I don't know. You were going to say something next. Or should I go down the list? Comic books.
Comic books.
That's a weird one.
Because even like, okay, so like, is there a
let's
difference
Let's assume we're not talking about single issues.
I was thinking about single issues, but I would say a single issue is not.
Yeah.
That's not a thing. Because they're a magazine. A magazine isn't a book.
Oh, that's what I didn't think of. Is a magazine a book? Yeah, I wouldn't say it is.
No, that's another T-shirt.
But is that elitism? Have we just been conditioned to think that? Why, if you took the text of a magazine, transcribed it and printed it with no pictures on paper,
which I mean they do and have done, like you back in the day you can get like a magazine a week, and at the end of it it's a full story.
Well, definitely that's like literary journals and stuff.
Right.
But not that long ago, there was a Kickstarter. There's a company called Boss Fight Books. It doesn't matter. I don't need to get into it. But one of the rewards that I got for backing it, and I can't remember the name of the magazine, so I can't plug it. But it's, I think it's mainly, you can get it digitally. They have physical versions too, and it's just essays about video games.
Okay.
And really well-written essays by a lot of different people about a variety of video games. Really great stuff. And I read it in PDF format, so it looked like a magazine. There's big pictures because they just scanned the pages of it. And in my head, I'm like, well, that's not a book. It's like I read a magazine. But if you took those essays and printed them in a book, it would be a book. So where's the line, really?
Where's
now
the line?
I don't know.
It's true.
Now I don't know.
And now, like, I'm sure the screenplay for Oppenheimer being 3 hours long, well, that's a book.
Now that's a tough thing. Screenplays and plays, like you said before.
I'm leaving those out of this because, like,
but
that's it's not written as a book because it's technically just a instruction guide to how to perform it.
I mean, you know what I read in high school? Shakespeare, The Crucible.
Right. Yeah.
Is that a book? I don't know.
Right.
Most people would say if you read Romeo and Juliet, you just read a book.
True.
But it is a play. It's just formatted a different way.
Because then you have to be like, well, technically it's instructing people how to act. Then it's like, oh, a cookbook. That's not a book.
Right. I think what we're getting into here is letter of the law versus spirit of the law.
Right. Now,
and I think that the Goodreads challenge, the spirit of it is talking about books.
Right.
And that's where we're coming into the split.
Now, we were talking about comics before, and then graphic novels are technically just... It's rare that a graphic novel... Because that's a word count thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm thinking of like Watchmen or something like that.
But still, though, like it's never because it's 100% images with words in it, but it's never going to be as many words as probably even a play in some of these books. Like it's not word heavy.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I think it depends. I think Watchmen's pretty word heavy.
Because then, so you have graphic novels, but then you have do graphic novels and comic book compilations count? Is
Right.
that a graphic novel?
You could call it that. I mean, those terms are
You know what I
meaningless.
mean, though, right? Like when they take
Yeah.
like a year's worth of comics and print them in a book.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, like, again, Watchmen was printed individually as issues, and then they compiled it.
Trade paperbacks is what I think you call those.
Yeah, sure. People use different words for both, I think, but...
No, I'm telling them this is what you call them.
Okay, all right, from now on. This shit's poems. Yeah, to me, I think, for the purposes of this case, that should be... Like, that just shouldn't be part of Goodreads. This is like how I get mad when on Letterboxd or on Flickchart, if someone's rating How the Grinch Stole Christmas,
Right.
the cartoon,
Or,
the animated one, I get mad because that's not a movie.
Yeah. Or like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty, like those. But it's even like I was going to say to you, like, for me, like but that's a whole different thing, because then what's a short movie?
I don't know. Let's not get on movie.
Anyway.
Let's get to the other big thing that we haven't even touched on yet, audiobooks.
Manga? Oh.
Because I think that is maybe the most contentious issue here. Manga is the same as comics, I
It's a graphic novel, yeah. But an audiobook...
If you listen to an audio... Well, first of all, have you listened to audio? I really don't do it.
I have, but now since... Like, I used to listen to audiobooks a lot while driving before podcasts were a thing. Mm-hmm. Now, podcasts are my audiobook. Basically, a podcast is an audio magazine, basically.
I think a podcast is a book. I think if you listen to a podcast, you can say you read a book.
I'm out of here.
I find that I just cannot... I can't pay attention as well listening to an audiobook.
Really?
My mind drifts.
But what's the difference between you reading it and making the voices in your head versus hearing the voices from a tape or CD or MP3?
I have to make those voices. My brain is actively engaged with what I'm reading.
Interesting. Yeah, for me, it's the
when
opposite.
It's playing, I can't. I'm like, what am I doing while I'm? Unless I'm driving, that's one thing. But I don't have like a long commute.
Right.
So what am I gonna? Do I just like sit there and
what do you
stare
do
at
when
a
you
wall and listen?
Listen to podcasts.
Well, here's the thing with podcasts. I don't care as much if my mind wanders because that content is not. I'm not listening to like a narrative podcast. It's like if I miss a joke or something, that's okay. It's usually like background noise or something like that. Right. But a book, I'm like, I want to fully take this plot in, and sometimes I want to like stop and reread a sentence or something.
Okay.
And that's not an option. Sometimes I just want to read a page real slow, and the book is just like, nope, we're going. The audiobook, I mean.
Now, for me, like, I prefer, like, I'm a slower reader, where I know you read fairly quickly. So, like, an audiobook, to me, like, I can have it sped up or whatever, and just ingest all that content and have it. Like, I could put it on fast forward mode, but I'm still getting all that content.
Sure. Yeah. It's different strokes.
But then, like, for like, okay, getting down a more serious route, for disability reasons.
Let's take this
seriously.
seriously.
For people who maybe have vision problems, low vision, blindness, you do have to count an audiobook as a book because that's how they are ingesting said book.
Oh, you're really gonna. Now I have to be. If I disagree with that, I'm ableist. I'm anti-blind people.
Well, no, but you get because it's literally a book. But I mean, where do you cross the line too? Because like, okay, if you watch a book based on a movie or a movie based on a book, that's no longer a book.
Yeah. Right.
Like I could say like, oh, I watched all of Stephen
King's
movies.
If you read the script, then it's a book.
I didn't think this was going to be so like interesting like this.
Man,
go ahead.
No, that's what everyone says when they listen to our podcast.
Right. I didn't think this was going to be good.
And I was right. Here's what I will say: an audiobook is a book.
Yes.
An audiobook is a book. However, if you listen to an audiobook, I do not think it is fair for you to say that you read a book.
Ooh.
You did
I
not
disagree.
you did not read a book. You listened to a book. You listened to a book.
But you got all the exact same content, just in a different format.
Ostensibly, yes.
Which,
But it's
at
not
the end
the
of the day, it is, though, because at the end of the day, you're only reading a book to get the story. It's not even about the activity of it. You're reading a book to get the information
I think
off
a
the
lot of
pages.
people would disagree with that.
Okay.
My part of the joy, I think, for many people, and sometimes myself included, is the process of reading it and taking it in with your brain and
taking your
enjoying
time and
the words on the page. And
it's like a meditative thing. But
Sure,
like for
that
me,
too.
like if I go to the beach, I'm not going to bring a book to the beach. I'm going to put headphones in and listen to a book.
I
Well,
bring a book to the beach for sure.
While I don't bring many things to the beach. Just me.
I don't go to the beach, but if I do,
Well, yeah.
I'll bring a book.
Or like if I'm laying in
my
bed,
Kindle.
I'll put headphones in, and like when I used to listen to audiobooks and listen to them that way.
Yeah,
But yeah, I would 100% disagree with you. But I see both sides because
there's
a
good people
book
on both sides.
it is a physical thing you are doing. But like, I don't know, at the end, if you're still getting to the story.
But you gotta admit, there's a difference between the sight of seeing and the sense of seeing and the sense of hearing.
Well, because like I wouldn't argue that sense.
They're
like,
different.
If I read a screenplay versus watching a movie, I wouldn't be like, oh, I saw that movie. Yeah, I read the script for it. I saw that movie.
You know what this is? You know what it is? To make it something we can relate to, there's just us.
Just us? Okay.
An audio book is to a book as a boneless buffalo wing is to a bone-in buffalo wing.
I'm sorry, that's a wing.
It's
I will
an
fight
audio
you.
book is a boneless book. I prefer a bone-in book.
Bone-in book.
Now, but again, I'm not saying. Don't get me wrong here.
Okay.
If you enjoy listening to audiobooks, you shouldn't be ashamed of listening to an audiobook.
Right.
I don't think it's a lesser activity. I just think it's different. I just think
Now-
it's a different thing.
So you don't think like a website like this person's using should count an audiobook?
Yeah, that's the trick. Yeah, I mean, I guess I think that is what I think. I think
Because you're ingesting a story though. Like you're good. Now, are you one of those freaks, or have you heard about any of these people? Sorry if I'm offending you. That read a book while listening to the audiobook? Because this is a community that does this, and my brain wouldn't be able to. Like, why are you following along?
When I was a kid, I had books with the little cassette, and you would
Right.
read it.
But like
Yeah.
that's how you learn to read. But like people do that.
I've never done that. It's
Okay.
interesting. I don't know. I've never thought about doing that.
But
But
because
it's
at that
something.
point you're just looking at a word and going, oh, that's the word they're saying.
But here's what I'll say. To your question about should Goodreads count this or whatever. I think it depends on who. It's up to personal interpretation and why this person is making the list. To me, the point of this challenge should be getting you to read more books, but maybe for some people, Stephen included, it's
Right.
more about I just want to have consumed said books in variety of
Right.
ways. To me, the challenge is like, I want to read the books. It feels like taking a shortcut to me. I said I'm not trying to be disparaging, but it sure sounds like I am. I just think it depends on your outlook and what your goal is for this list.
Well, because also too, like, on this list, he's saying that he read this book. He doesn't have to tell people it's an audiobook. He could just be like, oh yeah, I read this book. Technically it was through my ears, but I read this book. You would say that's a no-no.
I would say technically you don't read with your ears. I'm sorry, it's just the truth. I sound
Right.
like there's only two genders person, but
Right.
but I'm sorry. The science says
You read with your
ears
eyes.
don't read. Ears
So-
don't read.
So,
Picketing
okay,
outside the library.
a little side point to this. If you watch a movie
Yeah.
with the subtitles on, did you read that movie?
Yeah, you did. That's a book. That's a book.
That's a book. That's a book.
That's a book. If you eat a piece of pizza and if you eat alphabet soup,
You're reading. That's a book. That's a book.
That is a book. You have tasted that book. Man, so
I've tasted that book.
there's really two parts of this case is the complicated thing, because it sounds like we align pretty closely with the other formats, but we have a difference of opinion on the audiobook.
Right.
So the question is, when rendering a verdict, do we kind of have to take both into account? How do you reconcile those two things? Which side do you lean on more strongly is the question.
Now, what is, because I don't remember any of the numbers or anything that was listed in the case, was it more so that he was, like, were more of the books audiobooks or more other formats?
He didn't give a specific breakdown. He just
Because,
said
like,
a
if-
lot of them were audiobooks.
If he's saying, like, oh yeah, I read 5,000 books and 4,099 are comic books, no, you read one book.
I don't think it's that extreme, but I don't know. We don't know the exact breakdown.
Because, like, if we go into the case, I want to pull it. I don't have it up anymore.
Sure, here, pull up the file.
I have it.
Open
So
up
I'm
the
looking at the
cabinet.
file.
That's
Let's
the sound of the
see.
paper. Flip. Thumb.
Does he really list on what he said? So, okay. Okay, so
Stay tuned, folks.
he said, but also plays, I don't count. Short stories, don't count. Poems, we don't count. Comics, you don't count. Manga,
Same as comics.
same as comics, so don't count. So the only thing on here, I would say this is a story of the. Just take audiobooks out of this.
Huh. That's what you're saying?
Take audiobooks out of this because that's a 50-50 split down the middle, like, thing. Because,
Audiobooks
like,
is the first thing he mentions, though. He says, this is partially due to me, quote, shredding through audiobooks at light speed.
Okay. Yeah.
I think you gotta count them. I'm counting.
All right.
Well,
All
look,
right, let's count
you
'em.
can do. You're the other judge. You can judge however you want.
True. We're gonna end up both agreeing. No. Yeah, because I guess when you like, let's say it was like the some kind of competition. Like this isn't a competition. This is just keeping tracks or whatever. In
It's
a
a personal
competition, I don't think audiobooks should count in like a. If this was Guinness Book of World Records,
Right.
I
Sure.
wouldn't count audiobooks.
Sure.
Because at that point, you can turn that up to like 200% on an audio speed up and be listening to these books in like 20 minutes. So I guess, yeah, audiobooks aren't books.
Oh my God! I can't believe you've turned around on this.
I'm sorry to all my, disabled people out there who can't,
That's the exception. That's
Right.
the exception. If you are unable to read, well, but then again, there's Braille.
You're reading Braille. You're reading that.
You're touching. You can
Right.
touch a book.
Right.
That's how you do it.
If you can touch a book, you can see a book. It's a book.
You can dodge a wrench. You can dodge a ball.
Touch a ball. You can dodge a book.
But I think audiobooks are books. I just don't think that you read them. I don't think that's a controversial. That
so.
specifically is not controversial.
Now, what if a drag queen is reading you a book? Are you okay with that?
You know what? If it's an audiobook, no.
Okay. Wait.
But if
what?
it's a live in-person reading, that's
I thought you meant if a drag queen is reading you an audiobook in person. I don't know how that works.
fine. They're reading the back cover of the CD. to
Now,
you.
do you the like a menu is not a book, but the menu at Cheesecake Factory, that's a book.
I think the menu is a film. But if you read the script, it's a book.
So verdicts. Do you want to get into verdicts?
I think you should go first.
So, okay, what is he's guilty of not reading X amount of books?
Do
Is that
these
the-
things, is he guilty of putting things on his list that do not count as books? Is it wrong for him to have done this, or is it okay?
So even with my plus or minus of audiobooks, because I'm flip-flopping here, adding just the comics and all that, I would say he is guilty of claiming that he read this many books when he's counting comics and other things that aren't necessarily a book. So yes, he is guilty of this for the most part. Let's say for the most part he is guilty of this. So yes, guilty of maybe, I wouldn't say lying, but maybe having a skewed outlook on what a book is.
Misrepresenting his accomplishments is how I
we
would
could say that.
Frame it. Now HTT, this is his own personal list. This is not for profit. This is not a public, or maybe it's public. Other people could probably click on his profile and see it. But, if it's, end of the day, it's your list, you count whatever you want. If that's what you feel counts. We all have different metrics of what we may or may not think that probably change depending on how long or short or whatever the format is. However, I disagree with his choices, and he's lying to others and himself. So I think that Stephen is guilty.
I'm sorry, if you were watching the video version, which we are video and an audio version, so you can get us in both places, I was doing a quick Google search on what counts as a book. It was too many. Too many of back and forth and not a definitive answer. And yeah. And by the way, people who read a lot of books and get into these fights, they're a little long-winded, so they're never short things. They write a book. So what about a Reddit post? Some of these Reddit posts count as books.
The Reddit posts, if they do count as books.
Right.
If you read a particularly long Reddit post, go ahead, add that to your Goodreads. That's fine.
So his punishment is kind of like, it seems like he should have to go and reread all these audiobooks as books.
Right. That seems like a no-brainer solution, for sure.
But what's another creative? What's
maybe he has to record the audiobooks. Maybe he's got to be the official reader.
Now, do you count them as reading the book because they're they're reading a book out loud because they're looking? Okay.
If you narrated the book, you must have had to read it to say those words out loud. So
do they have
that book?
They must not have audiobook manga. I guess that's just anime.
I bet it exists, but probably not in a lot of them.
Because they would have to be in this pain, this happened. In this pain, this happens.
Yeah. Panel?
Pain? Pane of glass, panel of a comic book. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, okay.
So this is an interesting case. I didn't think reading the case that it would get this in depth of because these they're called comic books, but because by true definition it is multiple pages stapled together, which makes it a book.
Yeah.
But it's
this
weird.
comes back to the sandwich arguments. It's similar to that to me.
Right, because, a hot dog is a sandwich.
Whereas if you want to argue the technicality of whether a hot dog is a sandwich, okay. But if I say to someone, I would like a sandwich, please, and they give me a hot dog,
I'm going to punch them in the face.
I'll be mad.
Right.
And the same thing, if you want to tell me that technically this short story or whatever is a book, I don't know, there's arguments. But if you're like, oh, I read a book last night, and I go, what was it? And you go, oh, it was a 4-line poem.
Right.
Then you're lying to me.
Oh, I read a book last night. Oh, what was it? My mattress tag. That doesn't...
Right. So, I don't know. I thought we were heading for a mistrial on this one, but we scraped it out at the end.
Well, because... Scraped it out? Because,
we scraped it out.
Because, that's illegal in some states. Because, the audiobook thing kind of turned me around. But because, he did mention all the other things, technically that is, those aren't books. So audiobook or not, the rest of it, not book.
Yeah, I see. So maybe this case would have been more divisive if it was solely audiobook based.
Right.
We'll see.
Now, what do you think of those Blu-ray steelbooks? They have a...
That's a book. That's
all right.
Book. Steelbook's a book, for sure. You could read that thing cover to cover. The essays that come in Criterion collections and the little booklets, that's a booklet.
booklet. That's well, but let us
Yeah.
know in the comments below. What do you think?
Yeah, you can. This seems like one that maybe people, especially readers, will have strong opinions on,
Right.
or maybe non-readers. We might judge them to be. You can email us geeksontrial@gmail.com, and you can also submit your own geeky case there if you've got an issue like this, whether it be something that you got into an argument with someone else or an internal conflict that relates to the world of geekdom. You can send it there or check out our handy dandy form, which you can fill out. Find it in our episode description.
But if you're going to send us an email, please don't make it a book. Short, sweet. It's great. But you can also help support us. Head on over to patreon.com/geeksontrial and give us some money so we can go buy some books. Because right now we can only afford, PDFs. And, we want real books.
We want real books.
We want book money. And where else can they find you?
You can follow me on Threads at Jonathan Estes.
Ooh.
And here's something that really counts as reading a book, is listening to a podcast about a book. I give this my official sanction. You can put this on your Goodreads because you can listen to my other podcast, The Yerky Boys, in which my co-host and I read through the entire Animorphs saga.
Now, are
out.
Animorphs books because they're short? Is that count as a book?
They're books. Oh, those are
All right.
books.
All right. And you can find me. I am The Snack Guy over at youtube.com/The Snack Guy, where I review not books, but I review snacks. You can eat a snack while reading a book, and you can also eat a snack and listen to an audiobook. Whatever, it's up to you. And I'm also, I think I'm Ivan Hahn on Threads as well. So check me out there.
We're done with Twitter. No X. God, get
I've been
the
hearing-
hell
that's
out
a-
of here with that shit.
Maybe that's next week's episode, because I've been hearing some shit about that, and it just pissing me off.
We'll be talking about X next week.
Well, it might be something else by that point.
Yeah, it might be something else.
It'll be
Hey,
why.
everybody. Thanks so much for listening. He'll get through the whole alphabet. And if you've got thoughts and opinions, keep them to yourself. I'm Jonathan Estes.
I'm Ivan Hahn, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.